Today we will talk about XLM and some connections into XRP as it relates into Circle and BlackRock.
The future of the dollar isn't just about business. It's also about national security. About 60% of central bank reserves around the world are held in US dollars, but that number is shrinking. At the same time, other countries are creating their own digital currencies to overtake the dollar. Stablecoins like USDC are the answer. They help protect the dollar as the world's reserve currency. That means we can keep our borrowing costs low, deploy our democratic values overseas, and provide a buffer for American families during hard times.
Even though we have a lot of activity in the BRICS countries that are trying to move away from the USD, if it becomes easier to adopt in a new DLT infrastructure, that could protect the power of the USD as it stands right now. USDC on Stellar has crossed over 200 million for the first time in history, placing it in the top 10 chains for USDC issuance. And Ripple and Stellar have been called out individually and together by institutions such as the World Bank and IMF. Here we have an example of BNY Mellon calling out Ripple and Stellar as special infrastructure and base protocols. It is interesting that a lot of the things that I have found to have interest in tie back into IBM and the Hyperledger. And of course, Stellar and XLM are extremely tied, and you even have connections into Ripple and XRP. But I wanted to talk about that because Stronghold and Velo are also Stellar L2s. And the more USDC and other stablecoins come onto Stellar, and you have these kinds of tokens and companies such as Velo and Stronghold who are so intricately connected into Stellar, but Stronghold is also extremely connected into Ripple as well. So as we get into the USDC and BlackRock ties, here is Danielle Dixon congratulating Circle that USDC and EURC are now available under new EU stablecoin laws. And it appears as if a tap has been opened. A tap from Circle's USDC Allow has a huge $2 billion pool and has been opened up and is trickling into USDC constantly now, which could imply that there is now a need for constant inflow and that something is starting to happen. And here is that wallet on Stellar Expert. And here is USDC Allow, which if we go down into the transaction history, there are pretty huge transactions in here. So you've got one for 1.466 million, one for exactly 2.5, a 2.81 here, and then you've got some smaller ones as well. Now, what is happening right now around stablecoins and Congress that might tie into Stellar?
Look at this. The Commodities Future Trading Commission, CFTC, must regulate a digital asset as a commodity if the blockchain or digital ledger on which it runs is functional and decentralized. This bill classifies a blockchain as decentralized if, among other requirements, no person has unilateral authority to control the blockchain or its usage, and no issuer or affiliated person has 20% or more of the digital asset, or in the voting power of the digital asset. So we know for Stellar that they own more than 20%. We know that. Which means if Stellar is going to continue to, if this passes, has not passed yet, but this has been pushed up. Okay? Right now we are, starting to get this ball rolling. If this passes, we will have absolute huge clarity on this market. If the CFTC gets this through, we could see another massive scenario where Stellar is burning coins to become compliant. And that scenario, an XLM becomes a lot more valuable. This is probably the most bullish Stellar news I've seen yet. And it doesn't matter. People will think, oh, this is going to be bad for the network. No, it doesn't matter because look at the transaction fees. It's almost like they're set up to do this.
I have talked about this in the past, and there are some assumptions that the US won't allow a creation of a CBDC. And I don't really agree with that, especially because we have tokenized deposits anyway. I think that it could at least start with a de facto DC that has complete government approval, and that could be USDC. And if it's on XLM, that comes with all of the open source public blockchain advantages that Stellar has created. They have positioned themselves primarily as the network infrastructure of DLT. And it just so happens that BlackRock has a ton of ties into USDC. Stellar and Circle have already worked together in the past on what is a functional equivalent to a CBDC. And with the connections that go into BlackRock again, it all just makes a little bit too much sense as to why USDC could end up as a preferred stablecoin. And here is an example of Stellar XLM being used as a currency to facilitate between two different CB. Here is the amount of XLM, and it calls out Stellar here. And then you can see the amounts here, and it's even easier if we have an example of it here.
The EURC in the offline wallet can be transferred directly over Bluetooth to another device as demonstrated here. Enter the amount to be sent over Bluetooth, which is 10,000 IDR in this case. Confirm to proceed. Now it's connected, receiving the amount, and the amount is received by the second card. Offline transfers are programmable to comply with BI policies. Send 25,000 to Alice.
And transfer failed.
Now August needs to send money to his brother Alex, who lives in Singapore, converting EURC into eSing dollar into his brother's digital wallet.
Hi Alex, I'm sending 400 Singapore dollars. Looks like the exchange rate used was 0.00093360.
Hey Eagles, just got a transfer. It's 400 Singaporean dollars.
On that screen here is probably one of the more important parts in that, and it calls out that is a feature of Stellar where the network is able to know what you are transacting in, know what you are trying to transact to, and it is able to find a payment path to convert in between currency A and currency B. So I have talked about the ties of Ripple, Stellar, and XDC into Securitize, but here we can see that BlackRock, Circle, and Coinbase are all called out as investors, which all of them are on here as well. You've got BlackRock, Coinbase, and Circle here. Here is an interesting post from Stellar that is in response to the comment of a BlackRock CIO, which was a few years ago, we thought private permission chains would. We now realize public chains are better. And that is exactly what Stellar is about. In my opinion, I think there will be a lot of applications of hybrid networks, but having a public chain has a lot of advantages. And here you've got some more ties into Stellar and USC. And it does appear to be an older one because it is referring to what is now XRP as X current and X rapid. And as I introduced at the beginning here, USDC is now EU compliance and approved. And it is partly because its transparency and compliance give it an edge over USDT. Here is more on why Circle is the first global stablecoin issuer to comply with MiCA in the EU, and they are talking about BlackRock.
Yeah, so BlackRock is a really fantastic strategic partner for Circle. They're a strategic investor in the company. We partnered closely with them to build this reserved model where we have the most transparent, auditable, kind of publicly visible reserve model for a stablecoin in the world. We've done that together with BlackRock, and that brings great liquidity, transparency, regulatory compliance, other things to USDC reserves. And, you know, I think we were really excited when we started the partnership a couple of years ago because the leadership of BlackRock, Larry Fink, Rob Capito, others in the firm, right, and the digital assets team, they had a big vision for where this could go. And, you know, we were excited to be able to partner with them. And I think this idea of tokenization, which is something that we've all talked about for a long time. I've been talking about it since 2017. You know, this set of ideas to have the largest asset manager in the world, to have one of the largest asset issuers in the world, literally say, we are going to take one of the most fundamental products that we have, which is sort of a government money market fund, and build a tokenized version of that. Super exciting.
And to not leave out Ripple and XRP, you've got Lauren Belive, who is the head of U.S. public policy and government at Ripple, talking about meetings with regulators and policymakers in the U.S. versus how those kinds of conversations go in other countries.
From the corporate perspective, all businesses, no matter if it's a crypto business or any other business, you need operational certainty, you need market certainty, you need to know not just what you're going to be doing this year, but how is it going to affect the bottom line for the next 2 years, 5 years. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this panel, there are other countries where there are clear regulatory or licensing regimes that these companies can come in and be able to operate. And I know, being the head of the US side, my meetings with regulators and policymakers are very different than my counterparts in different global jurisdictions, where we're still talking about some of the bigger political issues. And you go in and you have conversations, if it's in the UK or in Brazil or in Dubai, that are much more business functional and operational. And you are seeing, these are companies that are headquartered in the US. These are companies that have an eye toward compliance and user safety. And to note too, a lot of this, there is the company demand, but we also have to recognize that this is a consumer demand, and the US government should be attuned to what the citizens of this country want. There's 52 million Americans who are now crypto users. And so there's going to be a demand on their end to make sure that they're dealing with their financial health in a safe and transparent way. So for us, you're seeing these headquartered US companies. Some of them are moving overseas. A lot of the development talent is moving overseas. Where you have that business certainty in different foreign jurisdictions, that's where people want to go because they need to know how to operate in 18 months to 5 years. And so that's something where you're going to start seeing a real dichotomy between the US and other countries that are able to say, come here and innovate, and we'll be able to see this kind of product grow for our users. And that's going to be really interesting.